Stephanie from My Porch Prints, and today we're going to be making journal toppers number 2. And this is a layered journal topper. And what we're going to do is we've got some fussy cut pieces that this comes with, and I went ahead and cut those out on my Cricut. But you can hand cut them as well. They just have some smaller pieces, so be aware of that. And then I also printed out all of the pieces for the journal topper. And I recommend printing these on cardstock. We used 110-pound Pen+Gear Card Stock, but you can use whatever works best for you. And so I've got flap A. This is going to be the front piece, and then we're going to layer them. So behind that's going to be flap B, C, and then flap D has this tab on it, and that's going to be what creates kind of our flip for our journal cover. And then it also includes this back side for flap D. So once you cut it out, we're going to glue this on the back side. And then once we do that, we'll be able to cut out our white circle. And then this is the very back, the back flap. So I'm going to cut these out, and then we're going to get started assembling them. Okay, and so for flap D, we've got this little tab, and we're going to need to fold this. And I'm going to actually turn it this way because it's easier for me to crease it. And what you want to do when you, if you're scoring this, which I recommend because it's easier to fold that way, go just a little bit onto the tab side. Don't go like onto this side, but onto this side. And that'll make sure that it's long enough to cover your back piece. If that makes sense to you. Maybe I should grab that real quick to give you a visual. So if this is your back piece, you know, when you fold this tab over, you want to make sure that it's not going to like be showing a little bit. And so when you score it, just score it a little bit more onto the tab side instead of onto the flap side. And that should help it fold correctly. Okay, and before we cut out our white circle, we're going to go ahead, since this is flap D, we're going to go ahead and glue this piece to the back of it. Okay, so I'm just gluing this piece onto the back of flap D, and I want to make sure this tab will fold when I do that. And then if there's any extra showing, you can always just trim it up a little bit, or you can hide it with some distress ink. I'm not going to ink mine because that'll take a little too much time, I think, but you could always ink around your circle and around your edges if you want to. And then to cut out our circle, I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile just to punch a hole to give me kind of a starting point for my cut. And since I glued 2 pieces of cardstock together, this is going to be a little bit harder to cut just because it's a little bit thicker. If you're having trouble cutting it, you could always use like a blade knife or something like that. So then we're just going to cut this middle circle out, and you'll do this for all the pieces. And if you don't have like a punch to punch a hole for your starting point, you could always take a blade knife or something and just like make an X to cut through, just some way to get your scissors in here. And you could also cut these on a cutting machine or Cricut, but you would want to be really careful not to mess with the sizes too much, because if they're not all exactly the same, they won't line up correctly. Okay. And again, if you want to ink the edges, you know, now would be a good time to do that, or inside the circle. And then also if you want to do any sewing around the edges or anything like that, I'm going to use a corner rounding punch, and I'm going to round my corners for all of my pieces because I just like the look of it better. You don't have to do that. But this one's a little tricky because it is a little bit thicker. So you'll want a good sharp corner rounding punch. And then it's also tricky because of the flap. I want to round these corners. So a trick that I'm using for that is to go ahead and just cut part of this tab away. Not the whole thing, but just enough that you can get in here with your corner rounding punch. Whoops. I cut that angle completely wrong. There we go. And that just helps our corner rounding punch to kind of fit up against it. Okay, so now we've got our corners rounded and our hole done, and we're gonna repeat this for the other ones. They don't have tabs, so you don't have to worry about that. But once you're done, you should have something kind of like this. So this is our back piece, and then we're just going to go, D goes first and then all the way up to A. So we just get larger and larger with our circles, just like this. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start the layering process. Okay, so for the layers, we are going to be layering these top few pieces, and they're going to get stuck together. So all of these pieces will be eventually glued down. The only one that's not going to be is this back one, because it's going to open kind of like a book. So we'll have all these pieces glued together, and we'll see this page and this page and this part on the front, okay? So it'll open just like this. But before that can happen, we need to kind of put some layers in here. So you can decide how you want to do this. If you want to start with the back piece, you can do that and, you know, just build up from there. Or if you want to start from the front, it's up to you. Just kind of figure out what works best for your process. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go through it, and you can follow along, and then you can change it up for your own style. And when you're gluing pieces on, just be mindful, you know, if I want to glue it to this part isn't going to actually glue down to anything. So I don't want to put any glue, you know, right here. I'm just going to put some on the ends and glue it down. And I think I'll just choose the word journal for this part. You can pick and choose what pieces you want. You don't have to use all of them. Okay, so we've got these layers all put together. We're gonna go ahead and set this back piece aside for a moment. And to assemble these, you can just glue them together, or I'm gonna go ahead and use some mounting tape, and that'll give it just a little bit more dimension. And since we're going to be opening and closing our flap from this side, I think I'm going to put an extra strip here just to reinforce it. And I may put one over here as well. Okay, not perfectly aligned, but I think we'll go ahead and call that good enough. Okay, and then the last thing we're gonna do is glue this onto this piece. So we're gonna use our flap and we're gonna glue this whole thing on to create kind of a flip that opens up. And you could, if you wanted, before you do this, turn this backwards and ink your edge to kind of hide some of that white space if you want to, before you add your glue. And now all that's left is, oops, I broke my little bird's tail off. And that's something to consider. When you open this up, this piece will stick out a little bit, and it shouldn't hurt it when it's just attached to your journal, but just be careful when you're opening it of little pieces that might get bent. So when we put this on our journal, yeah, so it would have to be like snug against the edge for that not to happen. So just be aware of that. You may not want any pieces sticking off this left side. Something to think about. But the next step is to glue this down, and if you want to, you could just glue the top and the side and the bottom, and what that would do is create a little pocket over here, and you could use that for, let's see, ephemera pieces, like a little pocket to hide some things in if you wanted to. There we go, just like that. Okay, and then you should be able to just open it up and have a cute little kind of tip-on cover for your journal. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Bye.